which actually influences the droplet size in aerial spraying. You have seen that in the last videos, we have worked a lot on the issue of the spray nozzle and the advantages of using each model. So, through this initial knowledge, we begin to unravel all the understanding of the nozzles and to master more and more the tools that we have at the aircraft's disposal. So, as we saw there, that the spray nozzle, we can use it at an angle of 0 degrees, which can reach up to 90 degrees. We talked about this in the previous videos, that because I use the angle of the beak, the more angled it is, the smaller the drop size becomes. What does this actually mean? What do I actually take from the use of this information? Basically, what matters to us? As for 0 degrees, I have the thickest drop the nozzle can provide me. At 90 degrees, I have the thinnest drop that the nozzle can provide me. What is this, in fact? What do I gain by knowing this information through the drop path? So, we know that the drop comes out of the spray nozzle and it has to be deposited in the crop. Basically, that's our goal. If I generate droplets, I can generate the highest possible droplet variation here with the TT11 Travocar nozzle. If I choose to make a drop, I will use 2 reference numbers here so that we can understand how it works. Let's suppose I work with the TT11 nozzle in the 30-degree position, and I'm going to generate a drop of 220 μ. And I work with the same nozzle in a 90-degree position. I generate a drop of 80 μ in size. What actually differs these droplet sizes? Basically, a drop from 80 microns through a drop of 220 microns, I can make 21 drops of 80 microns. So, in the beginning, I can have more drops available to cover my target. So basically, I already have an advantage in decreasing the droplet size. Obviously, for every advantage, I'm going to have some disadvantages. For example, if I have a very thin droplet, I'm going to have some problems with drift. I'm going to have some problems with evaporation. So I'll have to control for other variables to use this benefit of a drop with a greater number of drops to have better coverage. On the other hand, if I am in an ideal condition, I am using it for an application that I can use this resource, which my focus is the greater amount of drops available. I will work with the nozzle with a greater angle, and I'm going to hit the most drops available to cover my target. So, as we said, basically, in this 30-degree position, supposing that there is a drop of 220 microns, and I made only 1 drop in this nozzle, I change the position of the nozzle, I will generate 21 drops and not 1 more drop. So, consequently, I have more coverage possibilities, right? To get a more punctual idea, if I take a liter of water, for example, and spray it here on the nozzle, hypothetical example, that in position 30, I made a drop of 220 microns, I would have available with that 1 liter of water about 180 million drops. If I change the angle of the beak to 90 degrees, again, a hypothetical example, I'm not saying that this is going to happen if I put it at 0 angle. It depends on a number of other factors. But let's say that in our experiment here, if it gave me a drop of 80 micro in the 0 position, I would have 3.8 billion drops available. So there are 21 times more drops available just by changing the angle of the nozzle. Consequently, I will better cover my target. So, for us to understand precisely that from the same liter of water in a nozzle position I make 180 million drops, changing the position I can do up to 38 billion drops. So this data is very important. But what does this actually bring in terms of coverage? Does having more drops really cover more? Yes, if I take, for example, a liter of water, if I make 180 million drops of 220 microns, for example, if this table here were this area that we are going to try to cover, I will cover 6.8. If I took that same liter of water and made drops of 80 microns, I would cover 187 square meters. So I'm covering 275 times as much area using the same chemical, the same liter of water, for example, which is our experiment here, our example. So, to give us an idea of how much advantage we gain by dominating, the tools we have at hand, understanding why we are going to use it, what we need to do, if it is more coverage, if it is less risk of drift, if the application I have to make. I need to cover all parts of the plant so that, in fact, I have an efficiency in the treatment. So, by understanding these tools that you have at your disposal, in fact, you will earn much more. So, using the correct nozzle, understanding why you're using the correct nozzle, understanding what the movement of the drop is, and the ability we have to generate different droplet sizes, this gives us a gain in understanding, even to make better use of our equipment. So, the important thing about this information that I came to bring you today is that I already understand that I have gained from the bits. The nozzle accelerates my adjustment on the runway. I gain more autonomy in the plane. I gain more speed in the ground team. Consequently, I earn more money. If I can actually unify all of this with what the plane was made of, deposit the right drop in the target, and cover and treat the target better, and I understand the advantage that I have understanding equipment regulation, I will precisely reach phase 2, which is to win again and again have a crop with a better coverage and with a much better result. So this is the tip I bring to you today. From this comparison of drop sizes, I have used 2 examples here. Obviously, very fine drop of 80 microns and average drop of 220 microns. I could use other proportions to explain it to you, but this understanding is in fact very clear in these 2 variables of drop. The amount I have of available drop the most with the same volume of liquid, and the coverage capacity that I have greater with the same number of liters. Liter exactly application. So that's what I had to tell you today to bring this important data. And again, we are increasingly bringing more knowledge, more information, and more tips here on the use of equipment.